My name is Natsuki Subaru. Not only am I clueless, I am also broke beyond compare. Welcome to another episode of Kids in the Basement. Today we'll be discussing ReZero. And with us we have the Scene of Pride, Chon.
Who decided that?
We also have the Scene of Lust, Echo.
I'm a transsexual.
And finally we have the Scene of Lost, Mantis.
My brain trembles.
As you can see in the title, and as I already mentioned, we will be discussing ReZero. ReZero, a bit of context is that ReZero is also an isekai similar to Devil is a Part-Timer and Shield Hero, but this takes a bit more of a dark approach towards the whole genre, even more than Shield Hero and all that we discussed in the past episode, so go and check it out if you haven't. Um, this story narrates the journey of Natsuki Subaru, someone who gets teleported into the new world, who gets this power that they don't die, they just respawn earlier in a certain timeline, and as they progress their life, they he starts gaining certain checkpoints, so when he dies he doesn't go straight to the beginning but rather to a certain point in time. This show explores a lot of his psychology as well as the psychology of the people around him and the journey that he takes into discovering his purpose in this world. And don't mistaken me. When I say respawn, it's not like the Mario 64, Mario, like Super Mario kind of respawn. This isn't treated like a game, unlike Shield Hero. This is treated more seriously, and we'll be discussing more about the way Subaru acts in this world and why it feels so different from all the other isekais. First of all, I would like to discuss Subaru's descent into madness throughout the whole show, since, as I already mentioned, has a very dark theme to it, and due to his amount of respawning times that we see, that is called return by death, we see that he starts losing his mind after the first time, and then just tries to keep up with it even though he can't. So what do you think makes this so interesting about the show, and why do you think that this descent into madness is so important throughout the whole show?
I believe that ReZero, or whatever you want to pronounce it like, is a show that's unique just because of this death. In almost every show, particularly in Isekai for some reason, almost every single time the protagonist is blatantly overpowered. In the case of ReZero, this is not the case. In fact, he's probably one of the weakest characters in the show, save for a couple children, and a couple of those children are still stronger than him, for sake of reference. The thing about this is that this is something that's permitted by the Return by Death. This allows Subaru to be one of the weakest characters by having this just plot device power, kind of like in Kegai Sensen or Blood Blockade Battlefront in English, where the Eyes of God let the main character also be weak as hell and still be relevant to the story. It's one of these MacGuffins or plot devices, however you might want to call them, which allows the story to flow also in a different manner. Because it's not necessarily a linear storyline, but pretty much jumps between parallel timelines, where when Subaru dies, it allows the story to branch out into a different direction, where it doesn't matter how bad the situation is, he can get out of it despite being so weak. In a way, being weak and also strong at the same time. However, this of course doesn't come without its repercussions. It comes again with the problem with mental stability. Subaru is shown throughout the entirety of the show as a result of Return by Death as both someone who is really mentally weak but also someone who is a mental bastion. Being incredibly mentally endurant but also incredibly mentally weak at the same time. We see many times him endure things such as the loss of limbs or loss of eyes or even just dying without too much to consider. Like even flinching. He's killed himself many times to abuse his power, in fact. But the thing is that we also see him break down. We see him go insane. We see him suffer. And I believe that's a unique aspect to the show. Because, like I mentioned before, most isekai protagonists in particular are blatantly overpowered. We're not supposed to see them suffer. We're not supposed to see them lose. We're not supposed to see anything other than the shiny day where they just succeed immediately, like in Cautious Hero, for example. However, here, we see every single one of Subaru's deaths, every single one of his failures, every single one of his regrets as a result of all of this. Of this specific ability that lets him return by death.
Yeah, I also wanted to add more that, as you mentioned, he's one of, if not the weakest character that we follow, apart from the children in the village. But what I find so like important and like that really drives the story forward is that his personality, we can say that is kind of the typical kind of knight, don't you think? Like he's constantly trying to make things right for the people who are around him. He's constantly looking out for Emilia, for Rem, for Ram, for everyone in the mansion, and even the people in the village. He's constantly trying to save him, and the times he has committed suicide, or the times that he has like decided to die out of his own will, have always been because he failed to protect one of the people he cared about. He has a very strong moral compass, and by him not being able to fulfill his potential or what he thinks that his purpose is, that is saving the people, we can see that that is what actually causes him to go insane throughout the whole story. We see that the first Emilia death hits him very hard, both because he didn't know if it actually had happened, because, well, it was his first death. Also, with Rem's death, the first death, when she gets cursed, he also goes insane and tries to protect people, jumps off to try and protect her again. After that, we can see in the second season when he fails to save most of the people around him, that he once again uh, decides to confront death and try and start over again. And he's constantly trying to fulfill the place that he has built in his mind about where he should be and how he should act around others and how he should protect people. But we see that due to his weakness and due to his sometimes he's very immature. So because of that, we see that his mental state is constantly being damaged till he sometimes just completely loses it and becomes, as in season one they showed, insane and being consumed by sin. So I find this a very interesting character choice, since it takes the typical white knight approach that some isekais take, but it doesn't present it in the same way as to how the world is built and as to why our character is this way. Because as you already mentioned, John, he is very weak. He doesn't have the power. He doesn't have the power alone to stand up and confront and challenge the issues he has, and it's due to learning how to build strategies throughout his death and asking people help and relying on others that we actually see him overcome all these issues. There are a lot of arcs that we can discuss to show this, but I think that one of the most important ones are the whale arc. That is the whole arc that goes after they present the candidates for the election. So what do you think is the importance of this arc? Because it's really early in the show, and I believe it displays very well like what it's the most accurate representation of Subaru and how his mentality is so fragile, yet he's so resilient to try and like to to try and overcome his problem. So what do you think about this arc?
I mean, I believe that the whale arc is probably the beginning as to what we see Subaru develop as. Well, at the beginning, we see a lot of development in the way of Subaru becoming more selfish or discovering his power. This is when we see his character turn in a different direction. In a direction where he, instead of trying to gain a bit for himself or just protect his people, he's trying to do well for the world, really. While it was a big motivation that he would be helping Emilia by defeating the white whale, it was still not the only motivation. He still tried to protect others, like the soldiers, like Otto, or even other people that were not necessarily involved. And as such, it shows a bit of a character progression of his. However, it also shows how he starts to become smart with this ability. Even with a moment where he uses his phone to see the exact time the white whale would arrive at, to calculate that for his next death. Since he now not only has the ability to return by death, but also use that to prepare himself, he's starting to learn more from this world and how to use his ability properly. Other than just, okay, I'm just gonna go commit die.
Yes, I agree with you. I believe that first, before the whale arc, Subaru was just starting to get accustomed to his life in the new world and how it worked. And now in the latest arc, he's starting to understand more about his power by speaking to the witches and how it actually works.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, this seems like a turning point for his whole like personality because at the start of season one, he's just kind of spoiled. Especially the reason why he got Emilia mad was because he was just being spoiled brat and wasn't following rules, even though he doesn't understand how the world works. So it's clear that someone who is in a very tight and situation and has a lot of pressure on themselves would get mad at someone who decides to act out of their own self will. And it's due to Subaru seeing his mistakes and learning that he can't take the challenges alone and that he doesn't have to fix things alone, that we actually see him, as John mentioned, become smart, start using his cell phone. He also starts understanding more about how the world works, and that's how he manages to convince Cruz, Cruz to help him. Yeah, her. That's how he convinces her to help him. We also like he's just learning and using that ability to gain knowledge and to gain uh, and to develop strategies to actually help him overcome the conflicts he has to overcome. Aside from that, there's also something really important about the deaths, which I absolutely adore, which is how they're represented in the openings. Because aside from that, I don't think the show, at least in the episodes, display the actual pain that Subaru goes through when he's going by return by death. Because what I heard from the light novels is that the process there is displayed as like uh like no one would think of committing suicide if they had to experience the pain that he went through every time he went through return by death. And in the anime, like it doesn't really feel like that. It feels like he could do it anytime at no cost at all, only a bit of like mental sanity away, but aside from that everything would be fine. Yet I think that the openings, especially the first one, by showing both the dark imagery and the music behind it and just like focusing the openings around his return by death ability, it gives us an understanding of how much pain he feels and how eerie and how like lonely the process of going through return by death is. So what do you think about the No, no one wants to say anything about the opening.
Well, the opening was kind of interesting in the way that it showed how the his powers to kind of go back in time worked, and it gave a bit of insight into his suffering and how he changed through season one. But in reality, it didn't change much from what we already knew after episode one, I would say.
Well, there's also the latest opening to consider. I don't remember the name, but the first opening of season two, where we see pretty much piles of Subaru's dying bodies, or dead bodies actually. Many just dying in front of us, or many that were just left from past iterations. Showing a bit of the path that Subaru takes, where he repeats the same path, dying many, many times, only to succeed only once. It's in a way just like trying to retry that one Mario level, which is like impossible, and you have to retry 10,000 times only to succeed once. But instead, you actually feel like you're dying every single time. And if you don't succeed, your loved ones die.
Yeah, and also I wanted to add that in the first opening, which I think is the best one. I'm sorry if anyone has opposing views, but in the first opening, there's this scene where he's reaching out towards all of the people in like, and they're illuminated by the light. I think it's the first opening. If I'm mistaken, then I feel really sorry. But I know it's from the first season where he's reaching out towards the people in the light, and there you see like all of the people in the mansion as well as Felt, and I think the old guy is also there, but I'm not 100% sure. And
No.
he's like, he's surrounded by darkness, and they're in the light, and he's trying to reach out to them, and the hand of returned by death of the witch like grabs him and takes him back, and I think that that shows so much about the process, since it's sort of as if he's being stripped away from the future he can have with them, and he's like leaving them behind because he wasn't both strong enough to stop his death and strong enough to avoid the return by death. And he's constantly being brought back, and it's a lonely process since he's the only one, at least till he meets it, Kitna, that he's the only one who knows that he's going through this, and he can't talk about it to anyone. He can't uh, explain to them why things will happen, and it's over a very lonely process because he can't talk to it to Emilia. He can't talk to it to Rem. Like he's just left to deal with it all alone, and he's constantly leaving behind the people who he cares about. Um, yeah, that if anyone has anything else to add about the, you can go ahead.
I mean, I don't really have anything to add.
Echo, you have anything to add or not really?
I guess from a artistic standpoint, all the like lighting and shadows do a really good job of emphasizing like each scene. So like when he's trying to like when he's running, so at the end when he's approaching the light, you can see like all like the shadows like around him. And well, yeah, you said he reaches out to. I'm pretty sure it was Ram, Emilia, Felt, and Beatrice.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
I think the funny thing is, he's holding the bag, like the food bag from like the first episode with that he bought from the supermarket, which is really funny. I just thought, and then I think this, I don't think, yeah, and he gets dragged back at the end, and it's like I really get the imagery of like maybe in this timeline, if he hadn't died, like the future, like past that is like way different, and like he will never experience that, or it's really like the all the expressions are really heartbreaking in all the OPs,
Yeah,
and even yeah, they're really heartbreaking because you can see that he's really suffering, and like until like season two, he can't really talk or like about it, and it's like really sad.
Yeah, and that's also what breaks him, just bottling up all of his emotions and not being able to express them and having to deal with it all alone is what really like allows him to suffer as much because he has no one to vent to, he has no one to express himself to. He only cries in front of Emilia once while receiving a lap pillow, and that's about it. He apart from that he hasn't gotten any consolation whatsoever, and he's being forced to deal with it completely alone.
I mean, ironically, there is only two people who actually know about his ability, which are Echidna, well, and by extension, I guess all the witches, but he doesn't really talk to them, and how's it called, Roswell, and both of them happen to be sociopaths who do not care, and both of them want him to die more.
Yeah, we'll talk about Roswell later on because in season two that he plays a very important role, especially towards the end of first half of season two. And well, it's better to do this in chronology just in case people in the audience haven't watched season two, so they can like leave if they don't want spoilers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, before we move on, I just want to say I want to murder Roswell in 10 different ways right this moment.
yeah, it's painful. It's very painful watching Rose just be Rosewold to the extent he is in season two. But okay, let's not sidetrack too much from the music because there's also the inside music. Like I really enjoy the soundtrack that this show has, especially the Return by Death sound. That is my alarm. I wake up to that sound every day. And overall, there are also like some very entertaining sounds that, and also the voice acting. Like overall, the whole audio of the show sets up a very good environment. What do you guys think about it?
I mean, the soundtrack for ReZero, I think, is like almost masterful in a way. Well, it's not really perfect like some other series. It does like contribute to the tone and the mood that it tries to set. With, for example, that sound of the witch is calling or whatever it's called for whenever Return by Death happens. It also like adds a bit of an ominous like kind of tone to it. It's not something that's particularly pleasant, and it's almost alien in a way. The sound, it's just like unsettling at first until you get used to it in a way. And I believe that's just like perfect to like add to the series because of how the witch's powers are supposed to be seen by the other people, of the vileness of the witches and so forth, or whatever you want to describe it as.
Yeah, it's very like the music handles the tone so well. In the Kiss by Death Kiss scene, the musical there is also handled very very well. Like once we talk about season two and talk more about it, like you learn why. But like it's handled very well. The music that they use for the town and the like main city adds such a lively tone to it. It makes it like feel like a town. Like I don't know how to explain. It's just like it adds life to it. It gives more depth towards the whole ambient that the towns and the city have, and makes it feel, at least in the cheerful moments, cheerful. But in the in the town where the Mabists attack, the tone clearly changes, and the music there is also handled very well.
I mean,
So I think that one of the most efficient things that ReZero handles is its soundtrack by perfectly manipulating it to create a very good mood.
if
And
I
sorry, John, what were you gonna say?
if I may like add to that, I believe that you were trying to say that it made it more dynamic in a way because
Yeah.
it made the cities actually feel like something that was alive and not just a two-dimensional image just moving behind the characters that we do not care about. Like the typical Dragon Ball Z background scenario in the fights where it's just a pile of rocks that we do not care about and we know will just get blown up in the fight. Or the stereotypical adventure like Konosuba where there's just like a random forest that's just practically empty. It's just trees and that's about it. This doesn't really feel like that. It feels different. It feels lively, as if despite the characters being there, they're not everything that's happening. As if the life came from the city itself and not necessarily just from the characters.
Yeah, I want to add that at least in the town, the the capital. At least in the capital, there's a lot of CGI in the background, and whether you like it or it works. Like making the characters in the background move at a cheap cost. Like it's a cheap way of giving life to the city by making the characters their move, because they could just leave them still. They could just be, as John mentioned, just a flat people not moving, or just be a pile of buildings that don't move at all. But they decided to add CGI to make characters in the background move, just to give the city more life. And there's also a lot of panoramic shots, about like overview shots of the city, which show how big it is and like how lively. And the that setting building, and that, like, yeah, no, that the building they make and the development they make for each setting is fairly well done, thanks to that.
I mean, yeah,
Um,
Luganica is like very well made overall. It's not a stale city, just like every single other anime city, which is a copy paste of the same real life city, which has a big wall and a river crossing through it with a circular shape. That's just copy pasted every single isekai anime ever. It's like an actually half original thing and dynamic.
yeah, yeah, and also we see the slums, something that most animes don't dig into. We see how there's a certain hierarchy, social hierarchy, thanks to the scenery, because the inside the city and in the slums, the layout completely changes, and everything is so, as you mentioned, it's unique. No, the houses, almost no house there is repeated. They're all original. They don't do that looping effect where they just copy paste the same structure. They actually try and make it original to add more depth and more, create a more realistic, like a more realistic life for the villagers. Since, after all, even though the story is focused around these people, most of the things that happen might end up affecting the whole entire, like the whole entire
Setting.
kingdom. Yeah, and the setting. But so by giving the setting life and giving the background characters a bit more of life by making them move, then that makes a bit more believable the reasons why you would want to protect them, and why you would want Subaru to actually try and save them and help everyone.
It also helps add a bit of immersion to the series. While in many other series, as I already said, there's the copy paste city, which is the copy paste design, and the copy paste like backgrounds, which are pretty much still. And almost always, they also happen to have a copy paste art style. It just feels like you're watching the same city all over again. It's just like lacks the immersion. It always feels like, oh, it's this city again. And it's like half disappointing. Because even the damn river is the same shape. But here,
Yeah,
it just like removes that effect. It's like refreshing in a way.
yeah, it really is. I remember, like, the first time I watched this, just seeing everyone moving, and I found that very shocking, because they don't always do that. It was just, as you said, refreshing, seeing a new approach towards giving a city life, and giving even the extra characters some certain importance by making them move and making them stand out a bit more than just still figures. But I think we have talked too much about this, uh, and we should move on into more about the arcs that are handled in season one, especially because I want to talk about how the characters fit into this. We've already talked a bit about Subaru, but we haven't talked about his like background. But since that is season two, we will talk about it later. For now, let's focus on the people in the mansion and Felt and the other like selection candidates, presidential candidates, and also Reinhardt and the purple-haired dude. So, Mantis, you want to start off talking about any one of those?
Before we get to talk
Yes.
about anything, I want to mention that these presidential candidates are better than anything we have in real life.
Well, what it doesn't like what we have in real life isn't big of a standard, so it's fine.
Yeah, okay, so back on topic. Regarding the people at the mansion, I believe that from the start of the first season to at the end of the first season, there's already a lot of character development. I mean, at the start of the season, you would see Rem being the main killer, the main person that killed Subaru, while at the end she was declaring her love for him. And then we have Felt that started off as kind of a thief and of the lower rungs of society. But then she ended up as a presidential candidate, having the Sword Saint as her backup. Yeah. So then there's Ram, who also mistrusted in Subaru at the beginning, but then as her sister started to trust him more, so did she. And yeah.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like the characters here, even though we don't know much of their origins apart from like Rem and Ram and Emilia, if you have watched the movie, we like they go through a lot of character building, and as you mentioned, they just keep evolving and evolving. And this is important because we see how they also affect Subaru. Like we see him being constantly affected by the people around him, since after all, they're his purpose. He's there to try and protect them. That's what he thinks his role is. And we see that it all starts with Emilia, by him seeing that she's willing to help others and protect people, even though she didn't know them at all, and even more knowing that she's being discriminated against because of her physical appearance, and even then she still tries to help people. He falls for her and decides to protect her. Then, after being saved by her and being transported into the mansion, um, he then tries and he learns about everyone. He learns about Ram, Beatrice, and Roswell, and he starts growing thanks to them. Ram gives him lessons that end up allowing him to actually be a functioning member of society because he couldn't read before. Ram teaches him how to cook, how to do basic housework activity, and as you mentioned, there's a point where Ren ends up declaring her love to him, even though she hated him at the start and mistrusted him because he had the witch's scent, which, uh, from Rem's and Ram's background, the witches called slaughtered the demon race since they're or devils, devils, yeah, they're devils, and the witches called slaughtered their race, and clearly they were the only two survivors, and they hold a grudge towards the witch's cult. And since Subaru had that small, then clearly they would mistrust him at the start. But after they got to know him and got to know that he's actually just a dumbass who just wants to simp for the people he lives with, they end up trusting him and they end up helping him in his journey to try and protect people. This is also seen thanks to Beatrice. There's that one loop where he ends up being saved thanks to Beatrice, and Beatrice protects him thanks to a contract they built together. But their relationship ended up going more than just a contract since Beatrice ended up protecting him even outside the mansion, and because he got her trust. And overall, we just see him trying to get the trust of the people around him to try and overcome his challenges thanks to their help, and also try and help them back since he feels a certain debt towards them due to how helpful and how kind they have been towards him, especially those in the mansion. We haven't talked about Otto, so does anyone want to start off with a conversation about him? Please, you can go into season 2 if you want to.
I mean, Otto is at the beginning just portrayed as just another merchant. He's pretty much presented as a entirely background character who just served as a plot device for like that one arc, just because Subaru was dying and looping over and over and over again to meeting Otto and having him help him. Just because of coincidence, because Otto just happened to be where the White Whale would be met. And in a way, that shows a bit of how really fate intermingles with the ability of Subaru, Return by Death, but it also leaves it to a surprise that by season 2, Otto would still be a main character somehow, for some reason.
He's
And
best for it.
yes, he is an amazing character that I did not expect from him. He's someone who is smart, supporting Subaru, and in a way you could describe him as the closest thing he's had to a friend in this world.
In that world, yeah.
Because really, if you see it, then Roswell is just like his despicable boss. Emilia is just a girl he simps for. Rem simps for him. Ram hates him, and that's pretty
Ram
much
is kind of
everything.
tsundere for him. Like, she seems for Roswell, but she still cares a bit about him, even though she acts like she's superior. But yeah, like, I also agree that Otto is the closest thing he's had to a friend.
I
And he
mean,
even points out that he is his friend.
the closest thing other than Otto is like Beatrice, but like we don't really have much of
Pastrache.
Beatrice other than just them bullying each other.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I guess he tries to be friends with everyone, but Otto is definitely the closest thing he has to a best friend there. We see the relationship starts off by him and Emilia bullying him their way to the sanctuary. This is season 2, so I apologize for the spoilers. But we see them bully him and just tease him, and even then he's still there for him. For he Otto is still there for Subaru, and he even risks his life uh, going against Garfield, season 2 character, Garfield's word, and ended up helping and saving Subaru from being captive due to Garfield being mistrusting of him. So we see him that he's actually willing to risk his life to help this guy that he met like less than a week ago, and that's really sweet of him. He's a really sweet character, and like I think he will do good for Subaru's mental health.
I mean, the entirety of Otto's character can be described as I met Subaru 10 minutes ago, but if anything would happen to him, I will kill everyone in this room and then myself.
Yeah, especially since he wants to protect Pastrache's relationship with Subaru, and he wants that to be real and canon
I
because
mean,
Pastrache best girl.
how can we talk about this like character Otto without talking about the best girl Patrache? Really?
Exactly. But yeah, like Otto just gets also a lot of character development in season 2. We actually see him because yeah, as we all mentioned, I didn't expect him to be that big of a character in season 2 since he only appears in season 1 as a selfish kind of like freaked out child man person, and it's thanks to season 2 that we actually see him evolve into this sweet and caring and like friendly person who takes care for from he takes care of the people that he loves, and it's very sweet of him. So that was like that was a nice character to have. Okay. Aside from him, we can also go on to Roswell. So from now on, season two spoilers are advised. I apologize if to the viewers who want to keep watching but haven't watched season two yet. So I sorry for the spoilers. But Roswell,
By the
Sean,
way,
you
this
mentioned
is
already that you want to hit him 10,000 times.
uh,
Evolve.
not hit him, kill him. Also,
Ah,
for
yeah, yeah, yeah.
reference, due to the releasing of ReZero, this is only covering the first core of the second season, not the second core, since it's not even.
Ah, yeah, 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 yeah.
That should be
I
mentioned.
forgot to mention that.
Okay, Roswell is a character who is, for the most part of season one, just distant. Well, he is to an extent present and solves a couple problems overall when necessary as a plot device. He is still overall very far away from all the action. He's been like seen doing actual stuff like twice, I think, by season one, in all of season one. However, we see the reason why and behind all of this in season two. And pretty much this can be summarized as Roswell is the, I want to swear right now, but I'm not able to, piece of blank that caused
Garbage.
every single thing that Subaru's gone through. Well, not every single thing, but a lot of them. He's the one who has set up a lot of the attacks by the witch's cult. He's the one who set up the sanctuary thing, where Emilia would be separate from Rem, so that Subaru would suffer and he would have to choose. He's trying to convert Subaru into someone who is similar to him in a way. Someone who will be solely focused on his one single goal and throw away everything else just to achieve that one single goal. And while that might not seem entirely bad to one level, this is highlighted to a point where it's like unnatural, inhuman on Roswell. We know as the viewers that Ram is someone who cares for Roswell, and we know Roswell to care for Ram by extent as well. However, he's also the type of person that did not hesitate to kill Ram, only to kill Garfield for having a mild advantage. In fact, he straight up just donated Ram for you JoJo fans. He donated her to get an attack on Garfield, to kill him. Despite clearly being able to just push her aside and then donut her with the other hand. And it just keeps getting worse overall. With him finding out about Subaru's ability, which was honestly an amazing plot twist, he decides, you know what, I'm not going to kill you right now. I'm going to beat you until you just feel pain. And I don't care if I die, I will get you to do all of these things, these horrible things, to become like me.
Yeah, we see like in season two, he just becomes the most detestable person that could exist in the face of this earth. But Echo, you haven't watched as much of season two as we have, so first of all I apologize for the spoilers, and second of all I want to know what you think about him, since you don't know maybe like from what you've seen in season one and the bit that you have watched of season two, like what do you think that he is like?
So far, from what I've watched of season two, I left off uh at the end of the third episode, which is Emilia going in to take the trial, and then so Roswell some reason is like beat up, and they don't clarify that much, but like I'm pretty sure it's just because he tried to take the trial and like deadly humans can only take the trial, I think. And so throughout season one, he's always been this kind of I don't know. I felt like he was just as obviously as like a sponsor of Emilia, but someone who like served as like a helper behind the shadows. Like you didn't know what he was doing, but then you knew that uh, he was like helping the group. So um, I guess it's just I see him as this sort of neutral character that's just chaotic sometimes. But I don't necessarily see him as like a good person. So from so far that I've seen.
Okay, that's fair. I think that was also my view. But yeah, no, that changes. That changes so rapidly. You'll probably learn why in like 2 episodes and ignore what Sean said. Try and enjoy the series without knowing that you had this talk. Uh, but yeah, no, we he just becomes such a detestable character due to how much pain he's causing the people around him to suffer because of him trying to, as Sean mentioned, he's trying to turn Subaru into him. He's trying to make him, as he quoted, drop everything else and hold on to that one thing that he wants to protect. And Roswell doesn't care how many times Subaru dies before he ends up learning that one thing he must protect at all costs. So it's kind of a I mean you could say that it's a good mentality. You must be passionate about something and it's nice that you hold on to that one thing. But the way he expresses it is no, no, no. Too bad. Too very painful to watch. Uh, Mantis, you say you want to talk something about the light novel?
Yeah, so reading the wiki, I found that Roswell's story is actually very interesting. He was a Echidna's apprentice and was actually defeated protecting Echidna before turning to the dark arts. After his defeat, even though he survived, he felt himself slipping and started his research uh, more into dark magic over what China had taught him, and in the end, he started to possess his children to in an attempt to revive Echidna.
Yeah, no, like in season 2 we do see him digging a bit more into this. I didn't know about the children thing, but it does explain his thirst for knowledge since Echidna is the witch
Agreed.
of greed. Yes, she is the witch of greed, so she wants to know everything that there is in the world. Roswell, even though he doesn't know everything in the world, he still is probably the most educated character in the whole show. He knows all of these spells at least that there are to know, and he like he clearly does have a thirst for knowledge, and he will try and learn all of the spells just to know them. And he has a whole library protected by Beatrice, another person who served for Echidna, I think. I know she served for another witch. I just don't remember which, but I think it was Echidna. And she protects the library. She protects the library with her life, basically. And all because Roswald just wants to have all of that knowledge for himself. So it makes sense that that in the light novel happens, which Tron muted himself for so that it wasn't heard and he didn't spoil himself. But yeah, that's Roswell. Now let's talk about Beatrice, since I already and how she's the mistakenly me if I'm wrong, but she is a cheat now other like disciple, right?
Disciple. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
She's
disciple.
the other like user of one of the gospels or the original gospels which were like intended to like tell the future. But unlike Roswell's, her own gospel actually stopped working after a while. Even though she works for Echidna willingly in a way, at least from what we know in season 2, it is also a bit of a toxic relationship where she's pretty much trapped in the library, working, waiting for death until she can either die or just get with that one person that Echidna told her to that would eventually come. However, the cruel part was that Echidna didn't know who this person would be. In fact, there would be no person. It was a test designed to see how much she would wait, how much Beatrice would wait inside the library until she chose someone. Which not only highlights a bit of the cruelty of Echidna, but also a bit of the tragic story that Beatrice has of the disconnection from society, of the disconnection from everything, really. And in a way,
Yeah,
that
we
can also explain her connection with Subaru. Even despite not thinking that he was a person for at least most of the story, even if she briefly did for a moment, the thing is that she actually did connect with him. And the reason why was a bit because of that loneliness that she had. Because of that suffering, which she might or might not have seen in Subaru.
Yeah, like as you mentioned, the cruel part was that Echidna is only testing her. She's doing this sort of like an experiment to know what are the extents to which Beatrice can and wants and like supports being completely alone, and to know when she will accept that she has a certain freedom of herself to choose who that person is, since as you mentioned, um, Echidna never said anyone who would be that one person, and that's why she, in some parts, think it's Subaru, and some in some loops, and in others she doesn't recognize him as that person because she was never given a name. It wasn't landed to her. It wasn't like written down anywhere. It's up to her to decide. Yet she doesn't know that. So it's she has a cruel life, and that's why she begs for her life to be killed, so that she can escape that cycle of loneliness that she has been forced to live through for most of her life. Um, yeah, as I okay, since we're already in season two and all, I'm sorry, Echo. I know you haven't seen you have seen the meme, but we have to talk about the witches, since the witches dictate the world, and we actually get a view on Satela. The person who is in charge of why Subaru is the Subaru that we see in the show. She is the
Right?
sole reason why he can respawn or the return by death. She is the sole reason why he smells like he just like ended up murdering everyone, and why everyone hates him based purely on his smell. Um, she's the reason why Subaru suffers, and we only know that she loves him, she's obsessed with him, and that she doesn't want to see him suffer. So, what do you think about Satella? For those who have watched and know more about her.
Pimp.
I mean, Satala is a bit of a weird scenario where we don't really know enough about her to like judge anything. But from what we have seen in the series, she looks strangely enough like Emilia. It's almost like a duplicate of Emilia if you changed her outfit and just covered her face. This also has a bit of an ominous, like, different, weird interaction with Subaru, where we see during this season 2 again, where Emilia goes insane, where she starts to love Subaru. She says, "I love you, Subaru," while he's bleeding out, dying, without her noticing. Or you could
She's
describe it
obsessed.
as Yandere Emilia. And this
Yeah,
part is just like strangely, oddly similar to Satura. With both being obsessed with Subaru, not knowing how to speak, being insane to a degree, and not being really understandable by human psychology of any sort. Everything we know about Satila is that she's despicable according to every single other character in the series that has even heard of her. That she's evil incarnate pretty much from what we know. That she's powerful and that, well, she loves Subaru. We do not know how she found out about Subaru. We do not know how the limits of her abilities. We just know that she's obsessed with him for some reason. We don't even know why. Which, in a way, makes it all the more ominous, all the more weird, bizarre. Whatever word you want to use to describe it. It's unsettling to a degree, almost like a stalker. However, that stalker has made you die like 100 times and come back and suffer again.
And lose sanity and just end up like being shattered from the inside.
Yeah, and see all the people you know die and never see anyone you know from your original world again. Yeah, that's pretty much a summary of Satellite, let's be honest.
Yeah, fun times.
Fun times, would do again.
But yeah, I we know that we at least like I'm 99% sure that we will, since it ended just with all of the witches being together. So it would make sense to see her again, at least in the start. And I hope that we end up knowing more about this, more about why she chose Subaru, why she's so obsessed with him. Since we almost don't know much about Subaru as well. We've only seen his past on both the start of the show when he's buying the stuff from the store because he's a NEET and he needed potato chips to survive, and when he goes through the trial the first time, and we see him like travel back to, or like be in a memory kind of distorted world of his past where he gets to interact with his parents again, and we end up learning a bit more about like why is he the way that he is, and it's mostly because his parents used to spoil him a bit much. They would allow him to be and to act in any way he wanted to. He left school because his parents didn't say anything about it. They were just very supportive and never put any limits to him. So that explains a bit more of his character, but it doesn't explain more on why is it that he is in this world. Why is it that a witch with ultimate power and a never-ending envy? Yeah, she's of envy, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, okay. I need my facts checked. But yeah, why would a witch of envy that has killed all of the other witches. She is probably the most powerful person in this world, except for Reinhardt, because I've seen a video and they say that they have the same amount of power. So that's interesting. But why would she want to bring Subaru to this world? So I hope that the second part of season 2 explains more about this. Then, in terms of the other witches, let's start with Echidna. Since she is the witch that we most see, she's the most like present, and we see her both influence Subaru as well as Roswald and Beatrice. So, what do you think about her?
I mean, Echidna, like, first glance, seems like a normal half-elf like Amelia. She doesn't seem despicable at all. In fact, it's hard to call her a witch after the description we're given of witches in the entire of the series. We have precedents like what everyone says about Satella, the insanity of the archbishops, and pretty much everything related to witches, just leading to a path of insanity that is not really seen in Echidna at first. Well, yes, we know that she is like kind of weird because she fed her, according to her, body fluids to Subaru, which we do not know what they are, and many will assume it's piss, and for some reason, even more will say they will drink them willingly. Well, we do not know what they are, but regardless, it's still weird. We see a weird side to Echidna, but it's not anything even remotely close to the likes of Betelgeuse or any of the, archbishops, the witches, or anything related to witches. However, there is this quote unquote human side we see to Satella. These similarities to Emilia of being a white haired half elf who is discriminated against and called a witch.
Wait, Satella or Echidna? You said
Satella.
Satella. Ah,
And,
okay.
Echidna, I got mixed up.
Okay. Yeah, I
I
was
got mixed up.
confused.
Okay,
Okay,
sorry, I got mixed
Echidna.
up. Yeah, Echidna. Well, we see these similarities between Echidna and Emilia. It adds a bit of a parallel of maybe the witches are not so bad. But as the series progresses, we see exactly why she's called a witch. We see how despicable she is. In particular, this would be by the end of season 2, or at least the first core, where she is seen trying to make a contract with Subaru. Well, it would seem from a logical standpoint beneficial to Subaru to know everything that Echidna knows, to get into the ideal future according to her, which honestly is probably true. The implications are where this all falls apart. It's what it means to work with Echidna. Echidna is someone who just desires, craves knowledge eternally. She's someone who cannot deal without not having knowledge of everything. And the reason she wanted Subaru is for Subaru to die in every single way possible. To know everything that she could learn about the world. Every single possibility. And it's not like she's gonna say, okay, you know what, just die this way, and okay, we're good. It's about dying literally every single way, no matter how bad, how good. Killing people. Of letting the loved ones die. And we've already seen Subaru go through high hardships, high amounts. From dying probably less than 40 times in season 1 and 2. Okay, even if we estimate high, I doubt it's gone over 50 or 60 times. Imagine if he died 1,000 times for every scenario. That's not very sustainable, is it? Even further, we see her followers and how corrupted they are. For example, we see Roswell, and everything we described about him is in a way related to how he venerates Echidna. We also see what she did to Beatrice, or the small elves that were the leaders of, how's it called? Of the sanctuary.
The Sanctuary.
That they were experiments to try to create like eternal life in a way. For Echidna, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And despite all of this, she creates thousands of clones, if I'm not mistaken, to try to create all of this, leaving them aimless without really much of a thing to do. And we are described that they were not exactly in pleasant conditions for most of their lives, until they themselves on their own found their purpose, or at least tried to find it. But we see the humanity that Echidna has behind all of this, where even all the other witches are like, Subaru, do not sign this contract. We, actually do not. If every single other witch says, don't do it, you know something's wrong.
Yeah, it was too perfect to be true. And I would also like to add, I remember when I watched the trailer for season 2 that we saw Echidna in her Windows XP background world, sitting under the umbrella, surrounded by all of the people that died at the start of season 2. And first of all, I thought that she would be at Satella because of that, because I clearly didn't know of the existence of other witches, and she was given a very similar description to Satella in the video. So I expected that, but now knowing more about it, I now understand more why she is the one that's being surrounded by all the bodies. I now understand why Subaru in that trailer is so mad at her. I now understand why it decided to show her like this, because it showed her kind of cheeky and not caring about the people that are dead in front of her, and it's all coming together now. So as you mentioned at the start, we kind of see her being a tease. We kind of see her being kind of an airhead, getting mad at Subaru when Subaru doesn't pay her attention and starts simping for Emilia. we like she's is kind of immature at the start, and even in the light novels, and I think the manga as well, she's depicted more as a child. Here she's depicted more like grown up, but in the original works she's depicted younger. Yet now she is like all full on manipulating Subaru, trying to get him to help feed her thirst for knowledge, help her know all that there is to know, since, as far as we know, Subaru can return by death an infinite amount of times. So that gives her an infinite amount of opportunities to know more about the world. Mantis, you wanted to add something, right?
Going, yeah, yeah. Going back to kind of what Sean said about how Echidna was trying to make her perfect future. I think this kind of plays in with what Echidna said about the return by death. How it's not supposed to get him the best solution he wants, but the best solution that the Witch of Envy wants, in which he doesn't die. And I think this could be a recurring pattern in the series in which each witch tries to get the future that they want most, perhaps through Subaru since he has already interacted with them multiple times.
Yeah, I honestly like that theory. But hey, that's just a theory.
And
An
anime
anime
theory.
theory. But no, honestly, I think that does make sense, and that's why each witch tries to. All of the witches try and stop him from signing a Chitna's contract, and we see them all trying to gain him. Like we see the Witch of Wrath. Yeah, it was Wrath. Like save him various times when he was like Jenga tumbled by the Witch of. Wait, was it? What? What? Who was the small one? Like the one that hit
Lust.
him and breaks in two. That was Lost.
I think so. Wasn't it?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
no
I
no
think.
no no! I
I
mean mixed up.
think she.
Lust was the one that impersonated Rem.
Ah, right. Then wait. Okay. It's. Is it Pride? No.
You know what? It's
Pride
that
is.
witch. Everyone knows that green-haired
Okay.
lolly witch.
Yeah. The small child witch. No. Wait. I think the small child witch is Wrath, and the other one
Wrath is
is
Minerva.
Pride. I think.
Wrath is the one that
I
healed
think.
him.
Sorry.
Wrath's the one that healed him.
Are you sure? Because well,
Oh, it doesn't matter.
the point is, we see them try and help Subaru. We see Gluttony like give him a bit of hints to understand more about the beast she created. Since she's responsible for the whale, for the rabbit, and for another beast that we have yet to see. And she talks to him about it, and she talks to him that in her ideal world everyone is either food or the ones eating the food, and everyone must be prepared for that. We also see Echidna's perfect world, as already mentioned, that she wants to know everything and will allow Subaru to die infinite amount of times till she learns all there is to know about the world. And finally, we know about Satella's purpose, that is to protect Subaru till the end due to her obsession and envy that Subaru must keep on living. So it would make sense that later on in the remaining part of season 2, we will learn more about what the other witches want, since we see them actually try and start playing a more important role in the story.
You know, the one
Uh,
thing that I'm curious about is again about the witches. Actually, you know, Satella is shown as this like weird thing, but like strangely enough, almost kind to Subaru. Echidna is shown the opposite way, where she's shown as almost a normal person at the beginning, as opposed to Echidna. I mean, as opposed to Satana. Most of the witches as well, outside of Satana, are also shown as normal, as kind people, kind of like Echidna was portrayed at first. So, do you guys think that they will be having a twist, kind of like Echidna in season 2 or later on.
Definitely. I think the most normal will end up being gluttony. Never be normal, I guess. We always see her normal personality, that is that she just wants to eat everything there is to eat. So I think that she'll end up being the most normal one. I think the most crazy one will actually end up being the one that helps Suaru the most, which is the blonde haired one. Because I don't know, it just feels too normal and too helpful. So I think that she might end up being the most insane one.
No way. I actually think that in the end, the Witch of Envy is gonna be the most normal one, which would be a
Yeah.
huge plot twist. It would be really interesting to see how the different witches show their deadly sins through their actions and how their character develops from the persona they currently have in front of the main character Subaru. But I'm not really sure how it would turn out since the witches could either be a friend or an enemy for Subaru.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I do see that happening. I do see Satella, and it would be like sort of a redemption arc for understanding her motivation and why she decided to kill the other witches. It would make sense if the case is that they're all insane and she's the only like sane one, and that's why she had to kill them. But this is a theory, and I won't make this joke twice. So let's move on to the next point, because we've talked a lot about a lot of things, and this needs to come to an end. But first, I want to discuss about the lessons that we learn from ReZero, because I think this show is filled with like things and quotes and mentalities that you can follow in life to try and learn more, to try and follow and live. I guess you could say a happier life, or like value things more. So what are some lessons that you might have gained from watching this show?
I mean, is there
Um,
any lesson other than if you kill yourself, there might be a better result? That was 100% a joke. Please do not, strike us, YouTube.
for legal reasons, that was a.
For legal reasons, that's a joke.
Um, I guess from that arc where Subaru kind of like steps over the line in the first season, I guess just be kind, but don't be selfishly kind. Because like, yeah, don't like be kind to the point that you're like not listening to the other person, and yeah,
Yeah, that you're talking about Emilia getting demarked, right?
yeah, I think so. It's like when Subaru starts like when they're in the candidates like inside the hall like with the front with the throne in the room, and then like he start like someone like does a comment about like Emilia, and then Subaru's like, "No, my queen," and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely.
Honestly,
I also found that to be one of the lessons that we learned. Like, you must care for others, but not overly protect them.
yeah, to be honest, the one lesson that I actually saw in this show, like outside of all sarcasm jokes, I would probably say is that you will never really know what other people are like. You never know what they're hiding or what they truly are until they show themselves.
True. But I also found that perseverance is key. Like, as we already mentioned, Subaru is weak. He has absolutely no redeeming qualities aside from his strong mentality. Even though he's been shattered, even though his brain is just a wreck of pain, he still keeps on going forward and trying to um, surpass his goals. And he was close to giving up, but thanks to Rem, he came back to his senses and kept on trying hard. And it was thanks to, it's similar to Pet no Kano Yona Sakuraso. I
Sakura
hope
no
I said
Hanayo.
that. Yes, that okay. That that it shows that even if you fail once, you can learn from it. You can evolve from it. You can understand why you did wrong that time and use it for your next chance. Subaru doesn't get a choice here, clearly. He can't just stop doing it because he can't just stop dying in the world that he is in. But but he could just stop giving or trying so hard to stop, or he could just like leave and let people do their stuff and just completely isolate himself from the world and not try and suffer. Yet he still tries to help others, and it's thanks to this strong mentality of trying to fulfill his own goal in this world that we see him become, and he ends up becoming, I guess you could say, not super strong character, but he ends up becoming at least smart. He ends up using his powers efficiently, and he ends up helping people way better than he could have at the start, starting from the whale arc. From that point on, he is very clever about it. From that point, from the start till that point, he's just dumb. So I think that's a like very valuable mentality that this show like shows.
I mean, yeah, Subaru basically has the power of trial and error. He's just like playing Dark Souls, but without gear, and without levels, and without, anything. Let's be honest, that's pretty much his life.
Yeah, he's just trying to speedrun naked Dark Souls
And somehow
with
win.
absolutely nothing to, yeah, with the power of the bosses like getting easier due to the experience that he gains from dying again and again and again and again and again.
With the power of suffering and sleep deprivation, he will eventually, maybe, I don't know, kind of succeed.
Yeah, yeah, but that's another thing. Like, it shows that pain leads to growth, and I know that might sound sad, and clearly no one wants to experience pain since humans are biologically wired to try and find pleasure in stuff and avoid pain at all costs. But we see him learn from pain. We see him understand his mistakes, understand why he got hurt, understand how he can stop getting hurt to actually try and help others and release the not release like um give back to the world what he wants to give, which is kindness and acceptance, just good white knight vibes.
Honestly, Return by Death would be like Darkness' best dream.
God.
Let's be
For
honest
real though.
here.
I mean, they have Aqua, and Aqua could just revive her every time she dies.
Not fair.
But yeah, she would enjoy it, especially since the witch would give her extra pain,
Subaru,
an extra source of
man,
pain.
Subaru would be OP if he was a masochist. Changed my mind.
Yeah. Okay. Let's stop the episode before it gets weird. This has been the ReZero episode of Kids in a Basement. Hope you enjoyed. Hope we didn't spoil too much. We hope to get the next. We hope that the next part of season 2 is as good as the first one. And yeah, see you next episode.
And don't forget that Rem is best girl. Bye.
Nel.